Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to tonight's qualifying preview for, of course, qualifying day in Singapore for the 2022 Singapore Grand Prix. Qualifying day, of course, tomorrow at the Marina Bay circuit. I hope you're all doing well. After, obviously, again, like I said last night in my weekend preview, quite a long break since the last Grand Prix. And yeah, thankfully we are back for this Grand Prix. And the first, obviously, Singapore Grand Prix in 3 years, and already from what we've seen in practice and seen with certain teams and their upgrades and stuff like that, there is already some very interesting things coming out of this weekend, which we'll get into in this stream this evening. Just want to say again, hope you're all doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world or where you're from. I hope you're all having as best a day as you possibly can be having. And yeah, in tonight's stream, what we're going to do is, as usual, go through all the teams and how I think they'll get on in qualifying. We'll look at the results of Practice 1 and Practice 2, the data from FP2, and also we will get into upgrades for certain teams, such as McLaren, AlphaTauri as well, and I will mention a couple other upgrades for a couple other teams, and we will get into the big news of the day, which I'm sure you guys, if you are on social media and you follow Formula 1 and the Formula 1 community on social media, you may have already seen, to do with budget cap of 2021 being broken by a couple teams, it is rumoured to be. We'll get into that actually quite soon into this stream because it is a big topic. But firstly, let's get into what happened in Practice 1 and Practice 2 today at the Singapore Grand Prix. And we'll get on to the first practice session, of course. Lewis Hamilton ended up quickest. It's been a while since Mercedes have topped a first practice session, I'm pretty sure. Max Verstappen ended up second, with Leclerc third, Perez fourth, and then Russell, Sainz, Ocon, Stroll, Gasly, Alonso completing the rest of the top 10. And then the rest of the order: Vettel, Ricciardo, Bottas, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Albon, Zhou, Schumacher, Norris, and Latifi. Practice 1 is worthless, though, in Singapore because it is still light during the session, so it's not a very meaningful session. Practice 1 in Singapore. Practice 2 is the main practice session really to look at in terms of the relevance that the conditions are for that session for qualifying that comes up tomorrow. And yeah, Practice 2 I think is going to be held at the same, or was held at the same time that qualifying will be held tomorrow. So a much more relevant session in terms of data for the teams. And this is how it finished up from the teams in Practice 2. Carlos Sainz ended up quickest for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc ended up in P2. Leclerc, though, could have gone faster. Definitely could have gone faster because he was right on pace with his teammate in the first two sectors as he did his lap towards the end of the session. So did Max Verstappen, by the way, as well. Verstappen, you can see that, only did 8 laps in Practice 2. He had an issue with his car. Can't quite remember what it was, but I will look up quickly in a moment what that issue was. But yeah, with Charles Leclerc, he definitely could have been at least a bit closer to Carlos Sainz because his final sector with his quickest lap was, I don't think, better than the final sector he did on the medium compound tyres previously. So Charles Leclerc, there's definitely more pace available for him. But yeah, it was a Ferrari 1-2. George Russell ended up in third with Max Verstappen in fourth, and then the rest of the top 10: Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, and Lance Stroll. And then the rest of the field: Norris, Vettel, Magnussen, Gasly, Zhou, Albon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Schumacher, and Latifi. So those are the practice results from today's running. Practice 1 and Practice 2. Practice 2 finished about 3 hours ago. And yeah, I think there is definitely a pecking order forming from what I can see so far. Ferrari, I think, and we'll get more so into it in a moment, but Ferrari do have, over a single lap, the best car for this track, which is not a surprise. That's what I thought would happen based on what I said last night in my weekend preview. And then Red Bull definitely have a lot more to show, and I think in qualifying trim, at least with Max Verstappen, they will be still contenders for pole position. Mercedes are closer, I would say, over a single lap to Ferrari than I was expecting, but they are still lacking a bit of speed when it really matters, I'd say, in the middle and final sector compared to Ferrari. So, ultimately, I don't think Mercedes have the pace to get on pole position tomorrow unless one of their drivers produces an amazing lap. But they are, again, similar to the Dutch Grand Prix. They're a bit closer on pace over a single lap than I actually expected from the Silver Arrows, which is good to see. And then after that, Alpine look like the quickest team from the midfield. We'll have to see what McLaren do. McLaren do have quite a few upgrades for this Grand Prix this weekend, so maybe they were just testing those out rather than trying to go for some glory runs, for example, on a Friday, which they have done a few times in the past. And then after that, looks pretty close between Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, and then the rest of the field as well. Valtteri Bottas and the Alfa Romeo looking pretty quick as well. So yeah, obviously we'll get more so into that when we get into the teams and looking at where they should be on pace on the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. But let's get straight into it, and we will start with the Red Bull team. And to be honest, today wasn't really on track that dramatic of a day. Their pace wasn't anything spectacular, but we have seen this so many times before, even at circuits where they should have, and they end up having the best car on the grid once they finally have to show what their real hand is in qualifying in the race. On a Friday, they don't tend to really be that competitive on purpose to save on a bit of power. And I think they also do run a bit more fuel on a Friday as well and try to focus a bit more on the race setup than, say, Ferrari do in that little battle, obviously, that we've had in 2022. So if you're a Red Bull fan, I wouldn't be that worried about what we've seen so far in terms of especially practice 2. Red Bull ending up, I think, 3rd, and Perez, I think, was in P9, if I'm correct. I mean, we've seen so many times with Sergio Perez that, on a practice day, he'll be miles off the pace, and then suddenly on a Saturday, he will, what do you call it? He will, I wouldn't say turn up fully on a Saturday, but, he'll be kind of where Red Bull expect him to be. So Sergio Perez will definitely improve on where he was in practice 1 and practice 2. And for Max Verstappen, obviously you could see he didn't do a ton of running in practice 2, so couldn't really use up the track and get properly in those cooler conditions compared to practice 1. Couldn't really get to grips with the circuit itself. I'm just looking to see what the problem for Verstappen was. I think it was just a little late on track. Just trying to see again what the exact issue was for Red Bull, and can't see exactly, unfortunately. On their Twitter, it just says a little late to FP2, and then they say Max has been on track with hards because he did do a long hard tyre stint towards the early part of the session. Just trying to see if there's anything that can point to what the issue was for Max. No, can't see anything, unfortunately. But yeah, even with the lack of laps, Max Verstappen's pace is still absolutely fine. I mean, if you look at his best flying lap that he did in practice 2, in the first 2 sectors, he was on pace with Carlos Sainz, if not actually quicker than Carlos Sainz through the first 2 sectors. But then that final sector lost quite a bit of pace, which I don't think is necessarily down to Red Bull not pushing as hard with their car today. I think that's probably to do with Ferrari just having a better car for that final sector. But I think in the first two sectors, for sure, Red Bull can show a bit more pace than they have shown so far. So if you're a Red Bull fan, again, when it comes to the on-track stuff, do not be too concerned, because I don't think there's much to worry about on that front. But let's get into some stats regarding Red Bull and qualifying here in Singapore. So Max Verstappen has never taken pole position in Singapore. His best result was second in 2017 and 2018. Obviously, 2017 got wiped out by the two Ferraris, and then 2018 he came home for second place after a very shoddy Grand Prix where his Renault power unit was giving him many issues that day. And also, Red Bull, their last pole position in Singapore was in 2013 with Sebastian Vettel. That was the famous qualifying session where Sebastian did his first run, or did only one run in Q3 towards the start of the session. And if you actually go back and look at that lap, because back then the tyres you used in Q3 were the tyres you started on for the Grand Prix, he didn't even push that hard on that lap, and he still ended up getting pole position, and he didn't do a final run to save some tyres, and ended up, like I said, still getting pole position. It was an amazing thing that happened that day, and ended up winning the race by, I think, 30 seconds. That was, peak Vettel back then, 9 years ago. Amazing to think that was 9 years ago, because I remember that race quite clearly, to be honest. Red Bull also have taken 37% of pole positions in 2022. And that is, by the way, based on the amount of qualifying sessions this year that they have finished in first place. Obviously, Max, finished in first place at the Belgian Grand Prix in qualifying, but didn't start on pole position. So that's, included him finishing first there in that little calculation there for the stat. But yeah, they haven't had the greatest success lately in qualifying, Red Bull, at this track. I mean, they've always been competitive in qualifying, have Red Bull. Like I said, front row in 2017 and 2018 and 2016 and 2015 as well. But they've not been able to reach up and, get that pole position. And, if they had in those previous years, probably would have led to them winning those races. But they just weren't able to do so. But the biggest news to do with Red Bull today has nothing to do with the on-track stuff, unfortunately for them. But let's get into it. And I'll just quickly get up the original tweet that sparked the story and got everyone in a or just got everyone talking really on Twitter. And this tweet was very early this morning at 6:45 in the morning UK time. Obviously in Singapore they're operating on a different time to us. So let me just quickly share this on screen. Just want to quickly zoom in though a bit to this tweet. There you go. And I'll just show it on screen now. So this was a tweet done from Andreas Haupt, I think it is, and he's a reporter for Automotor and Sport. You remember that's the publication I, take a lot of information from, because they are so reliable in their reporting, and they're probably one of the best publications out there for, reporting F1 news before it's actually announced itself and getting scoops and that. He tweeted this morning, saying, there is a rumour going round in the paddock that two teams breached the budget cap last season. It is said to be Red Bull and Aston Martin. The FIA is supposed to make a statement in due course. So I'll just quickly cut back to pictures of the Red Bull here. So that was tweeted this morning, and, this guy and the publication he works for, this isn't just some base level journalist. He's going to have some, quite a bit of access to some very important people. And he, I have no doubt, would have known exactly the chances of this being true when he tweeted this out. I don't think this is just pie in the sky thinking or anything like that. But if I then go to Tammy's Twitter, this person is someone who reports a lot of the automotive and sports stuff. She did a long thread earlier reporting some of the stuff from the article going into the budget cap stuff, and I'm just going to find it quickly before show it on screen. Let me see if I can find this quite a while ago, because it was tweeted out quite a long time ago. Is it this? Yeah, it is. Actually, no, it's not that. Let me find the actual one. Is it this one? Just trying to find the correct one. Yeah, this is it. So let me just get this on screen. So this is a translation of the information in the article from that journalist. So paddock rumours say that already in the first year, 2021, of the budget cap, 2 teams exceeded $474.4 million limit, one of them to a considerable extent. Now, the considerable extent that it was broken, the team, I guess you could say, who broke it more so than the other one, that one is rumoured to be Red Bull as well. So, yeah, this could get very tasty indeed. The rumour in the paddock is that the 2 teams are Red Bull and Aston Martin. And then this tweet, Mercedes and Ferrari are told that an extra $5 million in development can be the equivalent of up to a half a second on the track. Those who are above the 5 million will have to reckon with harsher penalties, possibly a points deduction and demotion in the championship. Another option is that the money will be deducted from the budget cap in the following year. Mercedes and Ferrari think this is questionable. According to their calculations, Red Bull not only exceeded the limit in 2021, but also this season. We've heard plenty of times this year it being talked about. Binotto, the team principal, Matteo Binotto of Ferrari, has talked about it a lot in regards to not understanding why Red Bull are developing their cars still at the rate they are. So, yeah, that's definitely a rumour out there. That, well, if this is proven true that they broke the cap last year, this might be true for this year. And then goes on to say that might be the reason why the Red Bull lightweight chassis isn't coming this year anymore. The costs for material and production are only added to the budget when it is used for the first time. Only the design costs are included in the budget immediately. If it turns out that Red Bull really did spend too much money in 2021 and gained an unfair technical advantage, it would be the last straw for Mercedes after what happened with the safety car in Abu Dhabi. Ferrari is pissed for a different reason. They believe that the extra money has then not only gone into the 2021 car, but also into the development of the 2022 car, which would explain why Red Bull had such a strong start to the season. Now, this line in that article saying Red Bull had such a strong start to the season, that is completely false. Red Bull did not have a strong start to the season. I mean, Ferrari, won 2 of the first 3 races, and they had, up until probably race 7, race 8, Ferrari had the better car in 2022. So, yeah, I don't understand why that was said, because that is completely false, that statement. And then it goes on to say, Red Bull's rivals claim to have calculated that the upgrades to the current RB18 could not possibly be produced within the permitted budget. They themselves are hard up against the limit. Binotto said that the new Ferrari floor can't come anymore due to the budget cap. So if I go back to the top here and, yeah, focus back in, or no, not this one, this one. So, yeah, that is the current story in Formula One, that Red Bull and Aston Martin allegedly have gone over for last year the budget cap. Now, apparently, the FIA will announce the accounting figures and who has kept within or gone over the limit. They are going to be announcing that on Wednesday, so this won't be really decided, until latter part of next week, and we won't really understand in terms of any punishments what's going to happen with that, probably until next weekend's Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. But if Red Bull have gone over by an extra $5 million, and if it is true that an extra $5 million or more is worth at least half a second, I don't see how they can't deduct points at the very least from Red Bull for last year and possibly this year. I mean, disqualification even from last year's championship is on the board of possibilities for the FIA in punishing Red Bull for any violation of the budget cap. So this is a big moment for the sport and for FIA, because if they only fine Red Bull and Aston Martin, if it is true that those two teams have gone over the limit for last year, if they only give them a fine, the budget cap is dead. It will be dead forever. The teams at that point will just start spending as much as they want again. For example, back in, I think, was it 2019? Was it Mercedes, I think? 2019, Mercedes said they spent about $500 million, I think it was. Around about $500 million on their car. And obviously that was back when there was no budget cap at all. And the teams could spend as much as they had. If they only give these teams fines for what is quite a decent violation, or quite a big violation, I guess you could say, of the budget cap, and again, the budget cap would be absolutely dead in the water if they didn't get properly punished for that violation. What we're going to see is probably Mercedes and Ferrari, instead of sticking to the cap of around $140 to $147 million, they're probably just going to start spending whatever they want from now on if Red Bull are not properly punished. And let's be honest, guys, there is no fine that's going to affect Red Bull. Unless they fine Red Bull literally the amount of money that they are worth, which is not going to happen in a million years, then any fine that they get, even if it's £1 million, it's not going to make any difference to them at all. No difference whatsoever. I mean, even with McLaren in 2007, weren't they fined $50 million for Spygate? And in the end, I mean, it did hurt them a bit, but not really. Not as much as it would have hurt, a Williams, say, if that happened to them now, being fined a massive amount of money like that. So any fine that comes from this, if that's what the punishment is, would be total bullshit. They need to properly crack down on these two teams if, again, it is true that they have gone over the cap. Christian Horner is claiming that they haven't gone over the cap at all. So we'll see whether he turns out to be a liar or not on Wednesday. But this is a massive test, because this budget cap, it's really and I'll go back to the pictures now of the Red Bull, because I don't want to just have Twitter showing for millions of years on the screen as I do a big long talk about this. The budget cap, it's been on the table in terms of being introduced to Formula One. It's been on the table since like 2008, I think, or 2009, having a budget cap. I mean, Max Mosley tried to for the 2010 season, when he was just coming up to the end of his presidency as the president of the FIA. He was trying to get a budget cap installed for the 2010 season, when we would have 3 new privateer teams joining the grid. And that fell through. But ever since then, and ever since really the 2008 financial crisis, F1 has desperately needed a budget cap, because the spending and how much it cost in the last decade before we got the budget cap, and really it was made a lot worse, obviously, by the V6 hybrid era, because of how much it costs to develop and make the power units that we now have compared to the old V8 engines from the early 2010s. With the amount of money it did cost from, say, 2014 to 2020 to go racing in Formula One, it was, for a lot of people, manufacturers, or people thinking of getting into Formula One from the outside, it was unjustifiable because the amount of money you had to spend to be remotely competitive with the rest of the field. Again, Mercedes, I'm pretty sure they said, it was either Mercedes or Ferrari, they said they spent like $500 million or pounds in 2019 in just, building their car, developing their car, all of that. So, a budget cap was desperately needed. And I think in a way, obviously the COVID crisis has been terrible. It's been one of the worst things that's happened on this planet for a very long time. But with the financial difficulties that came with that, with everything being shut down and the economy going downhill since the COVID outbreak, and because of the COVID outbreak at the time, when the budget cap was agreed upon in, I think, mid-2020, it was desperately needed because it was becoming again unjustifiable, the costs for Formula One, considering what's going on in the real world. And if F1 was going to try and bring in an Audi, which they are bringing in for 2026, and other teams or manufacturers, it wasn't going to be really possible without a budget cap. So it was critical we had a budget cap added to Formula One, and we have had it added. And it will be, as long as it's properly enforced and teams actually stick to it, it will be, in the long term, the best thing for Formula One, and it will eventually start bringing the grid closer together. Not this year, but when we get to, say, 2024, 2025, I think people will start to notice a big difference compared to now and last year even, with the grid and the just how far the grid is spaced apart. But like I said a few moments ago, this is a critical moment, because if they do not properly punish these teams, if again they have been proven to violate the budget cap restrictions, and if Red Bull, it's said they've significantly breached these restrictions, if that is true, they have got to be punished big time. I'm not saying disqualify them from the championship, but if they can prove that development from last year, or money spent last year developing either last year's car or this year's car, had a clear or was a clear unfair advantage for them, then there has to be either a serious docking of constructors' points, like a big amount, or they need to be disqualified either from last year's Constructors' Championship or this year's, because it is not fair at all. So, yeah, they've got to stand firm, and they've got to be strong, because if they don't, then all of the work getting this through, getting this passed, and getting this, the budget cap into Formula One, something, again, it's desperately needed since the 2008 financial crisis. And even before then, you could have said or argued that it was desperately needed for Formula One, a budget cap of some sort. It will be dead in the water, and it will probably never come back again, to be honest, because the teams will just blatantly break the rules from now on, if they don't really get punished that much at all. So, fingers crossed the FIA actually come out and do something, or make a big decision that is a good decision, because the FIA, in the last few years, haven't come out with the greatest reputation. So, with decisions they've made and stuff like that. So, yeah, this is a big, big moment. And I'm not going to sit here and be really dramatic, but I cannot stress how important this is. This is so important to the future of Formula One, this budget cap. It really, really is. So, yeah, the next week or so is going to be very big in the Formula One world. I will probably do some sort of video on it in a week or so from now. Again, though, we have to wait till Wednesday to when the FIA officially It's said, I don't think it's confirmed that it is Wednesday that they're going to reveal this information, but David Croft, the Sky Sports F1 commentator, did say that Wednesday is thought to be the date that it's going to be revealed. So we will see what happens with that. Again, this could be an absolute bombshell in the Formula One world, and we'll see what happens. I can't say any more than that. The only other thing I was going to say is if it was proven that Red Bull spent 5 million or more developing the 2021 car to be able to win the championship, or spent that extra 5 million or more, or whatever million over the budget cap to develop this year's car, then there needs to be some serious repercussions. I don't think they need to go like, banning them from the championship for a year or something like that. I don't think they need to go to literally the worst punishment possible, but it needs to be something that sends a message. There is no doubt about that. But we'll see how this shakes out. There's nothing really, I don't think there's going to be really any news updates in regards to this story until probably, next Wednesday. I don't think we'll hear anything between now and then in regards to new updates on this. So we'll wait and see, and I'll update you guys as to what happens with this when we get to that next Wednesday, and see what happens with this whole controversy. Anyway, let me know, before I go on to the rest of the teams, let me know that, let me know in the live chat, what do you think of this whole story? Do you think Red Bull should be properly punished for this violation? If allegedly they have violated the budget cap restriction, if they have, let me know. Do you think they should be properly punished to send a message? And what punishment, this is what I want to know most, what punishment would you give them? If it is, say it comes out next week that Red Bull spent an extra $5 to $7 million developing last year's car, or half of it went on last year's and half of it went on this year's car, let me know what the punishment you think should be for Red Bull. And I will make sure to get to your comments soon enough in regards to this topic. Anyway, let's go on to the rest of the top teams, and then I will get to your comments in the chat. So, next up, we'll go on to the Scuderia Ferrari team. And no surprise really that today they ended up with them being first and second in practice 2. The only representative practice session, again, due to the conditions being very, very similar to qualifying and the race. When practice 2 and practice 2, the conditions aren't that similar because it's held in the daylight, kind of. No surprise there about their pace. 1 and 2 they were in practice 2. Carlos Sainz, I will say, a bit surprising that he was quicker than Charles Leclerc. I know Leclerc had his issues. He had a gearbox problem, I think, in practice 1, and then didn't get out on track, I think, until 15-20 minutes into practice 2. So Leclerc didn't have the cleanest session in the world, but I was surprised that Carlos ended up quickest. Even though I said last night, Carlos has a very good record here. He's finished, I think he finished 4th here for Toro Rosso in the 2017 Singapore Grand Prix. Finished 8th here, I think, for Renault in the 2018 race. He's had some good qualifyings here as well. I think qualified 6th in 2016 for Toro Rosso, I want to say. So, he's always been very good here, but I didn't think he would be 0.2 of a second quicker than the next quickest person. And a very surprising pace. Good to see Carlos right up there, rather than it just being Leclerc or Verstappen. And it would be very interesting to see, and it'd be exciting to see, if Carlos Sainz could get pole position here in Singapore. And given the pace he's shown so far, I think we'd have to say it is definitely possible that Carlos Sainz can get pole position tomorrow. We'll see whether he can deliver under pressure. We know Charles Leclerc can. Obviously got pole here in 2019 with an incredible lap. Incredible not just with how great it was, but how he made a couple of mistakes on that lap and still got pole position. It was an incredible qualifying session that day in Singapore. But yeah, had a bit of a messy day today with the lack of running. But if tomorrow, there's no reliability problems on Ferrari's side and he can have clean running, I think Charles Leclerc is still the favourite for pole position tomorrow. And I would be very surprised, looking broadly now at Ferrari, I would be very surprised if Ferrari are not on pole position tomorrow. It will take a amazing lap from Verstappen, Russell or Hamilton, really, for Ferrari to not get pole. I think even, to be honest, given the pace they've shown so far and just how well suited this Ferrari car is to the track layout, it's going to be pretty hard to for anyone else to get into even second place. They could definitely get a 1-2 tomorrow. I know in the past, in practice sessions, Ferrari have had, say, a 1-2 and then ended up on the Saturday either not getting pole position or at best getting first and third or first and fourth. But yeah, given how their car is so well suited to this track and how quick they've been so far, a third of a second quicker pretty much than the rest of the field, looking very, very good. Very, very good. So if you're a Ferrari fan, I wouldn't say be very confident, because you do have to remember that it is Ferrari at the end of the day. Ferrari are, how do we describe them at this point with Ferrari? Is it Jekyll and Hyde, the character? 1 minute it's one person, and the next minute it's a completely different person. That's kind of like Ferrari. You don't know which side is going to be showing at what point, but we'll see what they do tomorrow in qualifying. But I would be very surprised if they don't get pole position. The car is there's no doubt about it. The only way Ferrari can screw things up is if their car has some sort of reliability problem. We'll see what happens with that in qualifying tomorrow. But yeah, they are the favourites for pole position. Let's get into some stats, though, regarding the Ferrari team here in Singapore for qualifying. So Charles Leclerc, he took pole position in the last Singapore Grand Prix we had in 2019. Did finish second to Sebastian Vettel in a Ferrari 1-2 in the race as well. Ferrari do have a pretty good record in qualifying here at Singapore in the last 12 years. Since 2010, they've taken pole 4 times. Obviously, Leclerc in 2019. Vettel had 2 poles here in 2015 and 2017, and Alonso had a pole in 2010. Only 2 of those pole sitters, though, converted it into victories. I mean, 2019, again, Leclerc was on pole, but Ferrari still won, but just with the other driver. But Singapore's been a good place for the Ferrari team. And also, Ferrari have taken 56% of pole positions in 2022. They are still the team for qualifying in 2022. And now we'll go on to the Mercedes team, who were pretty good today. A lot better than I expected. I mean, I said in my preview yesterday that I thought they would win the race this weekend, but I did think over a single lap they would struggle a bit compared to Ferrari, at least over a single lap, and Red Bull as well, to a certain extent. But today they were pretty good. I mean, practice 1, even though the conditions weren't totally representative of what it's going to be like in qualifying. Lewis Hamilton topping the timesheets right away, and the car was looking pretty good, I hear, as well. I didn't actually watch practice 1, but from what I hear, the car looked pretty good compared to what people were maybe expecting, or at least what the Sky Sports F1 commentators were expecting, such as Anthony Davidson, who actually I think is still with the Mercedes team as well. But in practice 2, pace did drop off a bit. Russell was in 3rd place, Lewis Hamilton 5th. I do think Lewis Hamilton will be the quicker Mercedes driver in qualifying. So if Russell, and if I just go back quickly to see how far off Russell was the fastest person in practice 2, Carlos Sainz. He was 0.3 of a second off, as you can see there. And Hamilton was quarter of a second slower than his teammate. If Lewis is quicker than Russell in qualifying, then if Red Bull, I mean, they will improve Red Bull, but if they are not quite at the absolute pace to be getting pole position, Mercedes could get at least one of their cars into the top 3 tomorrow. It is possible. I don't think they will, but it is definitely possible. My prediction for them tomorrow is probably 4th and 5th, because I think Verstappen in the Red Bull will be a lot quicker tomorrow, as long as he doesn't have any problems with, getting some good running on track like he did in practice 2. So yeah, I think they will be 4th and 5th. They'll be close-ish to the cars ahead, 2 or 3 tenths away. Not a massive gap like we've seen in previous Grand Prix, but they just won't have the absolute raw pace, I don't think, to get pole position. But if they are at least 4th and 5th on the grid, they can definitely win the Grand Prix on Sunday. But in terms of what's possible, 3rd place, maybe 2nd if one of the drivers pulls out an absolute stonker of a lap, is possible for the Mercedes team. But looking at the top 3 teams, I will, give my prediction for how I think it'll end up. I'm going to go Charles Leclerc on pole, and then 2nd, I'm going to go Max Verstappen, and then in 3rd place, I will go Carlos Sainz, with Hamilton 4th and Russell 5th, and then Perez in P6. That is what I'll go for qualifying tomorrow. But the only positions that I think could change around compared to my prediction there is probably Verstappen versus Sainz for 2nd. I think as long as Leclerc nails his laps in qualifying, I don't see Leclerc being under an absolute massive threat for pole position, to be honest. And then, Mercedes might be able to nick a 3rd or maybe even a 2nd if, again, one of their drivers pulls out an amazing lap. But, it's looking very good for the top 3. It's looking very, very good for the... when I say top 3, I mean the top 3 teams. It's looking very good in terms of our entertainment and the excitement ahead going into qualifying, because we do have a 3-team fight for the top 6 positions, which is what we want for Formula 1 at the minute. I mean, realistically, that's the best you're going to get in Formula 1. There is the odd season here or there where you have 4 teams or even more fighting for the top 5, top 6 positions, such as, the 2012 season. I guess you could say last year to a certain extent, when McLaren and Ferrari were able to get up there in qualifying, and other seasons like 2009, 2008, where we had more than 3 teams fighting for the top 5, top 6 positions. But realistically, in most years, having 3 teams at most fighting for the top few positions is the best it can get to. So that's looking good for us going into qualifying, and it should be, compared to Monza, a much, 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 much better qualifying session in terms of entertainment for us F1 fans. But before I come to you guys in the chat to read your comments in regards to what I've talked about so far, let me get into the data from FP2. Because obviously, very important to go through it, and it does tell us a bit of a story of how things are looking so far. By the way, again, as I say every time, credit to Lights Out F1 blog. Make sure to go check out the website. You can see there on the bottom of this graphic, and make sure to go follow them on Twitter. You can see their Twitter in the top right as well. Let's get into this. The sector by sector team rankings for all of the sectors, and for the entire lap, the ideal lap, as you can see there on the far right-hand side of the screen, because it does tell, I think, a story of, who is where in terms of pace so far this weekend. So, looking at the top 3 teams in the fight for pole position tomorrow, Sector 1, not really a surprise that Ferrari are 3rd in that sector, because their strength is downforce, and they do have more drag on their car anyway. they're going to be running a lot more downforce this weekend more than normal because they know just how strong their car's going to be at this track. So it's not a surprise that they are a tenth and a half slower than Mercedes. I mean, and as well, yeah, with Red Bull, it's not really a surprise either that they're, a tenth or so slower than them. But in Sector 2 and Sector 3 is really where Ferrari are so far this weekend making their money. 0.2 of a second quicker in the second sector, and in the second sector as well compared to Mercedes. 0.4 of a second, the difference between Ferrari and Mercedes, and of course Ferrari's favour. And then the final sector, Mercedes, I've got to say, doing very well in that final sector. And then Red Bull quite a bit off in that final sector. 3.5 of a second they were losing to Ferrari in practice 2, with the best sector 3 they could manage. So for the ideal laps, you can see on the far right-hand side of the screen again, Ferrari, it says, are about 0.3 quicker than Mercedes. And then Red Bull, by the looks of it at the minute, are about half a second off. I think Red Bull, looking at the sectors so far, I think you'll probably see them tomorrow the quickest in Sector 1, because it is the most high-speed part of the track, and we know how quick they are at high speed. And also Sector 2, you do have that short DRS straight, which, does account for a slight bit of time that once Red Bull start running their car in its, highest engine mode and lowest fuel mode, whatever you want to call it, they'll be a bit quicker in that sector as well. If Red Bull are going to get pole position, the sector they need to work on is Sector 3, because even if they are sandbagging a bit, that final sector, you can't really tell in that final sector in terms of what teams may be sandbagging a bit compared to other teams. So you're going to tell it more in the first sector or even Sector 2 rather than Sector 3, to be honest, unless Red Bull are running a massive fuel load, which compared to Ferrari, which I don't think was the case there with Red Bull. So I think Red Bull will improve tomorrow, probably by 0.2, maybe 2.5 of a second, compared to where they are at the moment compared to Ferrari. So what I think will happen for the top 3 is it'll be Ferrari quickest, about 0.2 quicker than Red Bull, and then Mercedes will be probably slightly slower than Red Bull, and able to get ahead of the 2 Red Bulls, but they'll most likely just lack that slight bit of pace, half a tenth, maybe 0.1 of a second to Red Bull and Max Verstappen ultimately in qualifying. But yeah, I think the top 3 teams, they should be separated by about 2 to 0.3 of a second. And then for the midfield, obviously we'll get onto them soon enough. Alpine, on for the ideal lap, they are 4th quickest. And looking at all of the sector time data so far, they are looking very, very good. And if you don't know, Alpine have a new higher downforce floor on their car this weekend. So maybe this is what explains their increased pace from what we can see so far this weekend. Because normally at high downforce tracks, compared to McLaren, you'd expect McLaren to be ahead of Alpine and be doing what Alpine were doing today. But McLaren were quite a bit slower today, which I think might be to do with them trying to understand their upgrades a bit more and try and work on those rather than try and go for glory runs. But what do you call it? With Alpine, I think their very good speed, I think you could possibly attribute it to that new floor. Sector 1, interestingly, a 0.1 of a second slower than Alfa Romeo, which is not something you would expect. Again, in that sector where it is the highest speed sector, normally Alpine are quicker in those type of sectors. Sector 2, they are actually not that much slower than Mercedes, only 0.1 of a second between them and the Mercedes team. And then in Sector 3, they're, a 0.1 or so, 0.1 quicker than Red Bull. So yeah, looks very good for Alpine. I don't think they'll be, under a second off pole position like they are there with the ideal lap on the far right-hand side of the screen. I don't think that'll be the case tomorrow. I think they'll be quite a bit further off the quickest car or lap time in qualifying tomorrow. But they are looking very, very good. As for McLaren, I do think they haven't focused today as much on lower fuel, single lap running as maybe they have done previously. I know I said a few moments ago that in Sector 2 and Sector 3, or in Sector 3 especially, you can't really tell with certain teams whether they're sandbagging or not. But with McLaren, I don't think they were necessarily, with their practice program today, I don't think they were necessarily, again, going for a setup that would work for qualifying, or really focusing all of their energy on qualifying. Because I think, again, with the upgrades they have brought, which we will get into when we get to McLaren, because they've actually brought a pretty big upgrade package to this Grand Prix, which is a bit surprising considering the whole budget cap that we just got into, but we'll get into that later. Yeah, they want to try and understand how to make it work in the best way possible. So I do think McLaren will be quicker tomorrow. I don't think they're going to be the 7th fastest team. I think they'll be at least 5th, maybe even right up there with Alpine tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see what happens with McLaren. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong and they'll be massively slow. That absolutely could happen. I'm just giving my thoughts as to what I think will happen rather than me knowing for sure. And then for the rest of the teams, Alfa Romeo, surprisingly quick. I mean, I know they've got a good car aerodynamically, but I'm surprised they're so competitive in that midfield fight with, Alpine, Aston Martin. I'm surprised they're so competitive in all of the sectors. Sector 1, quickest midfield team. Sector 2, they're only slightly slower than Alpine. And then Sector 3, they are, a quarter of a second quicker than Aston Martin, and 4/10 quicker than McLaren in that final sector. So yeah, very surprised as to the pace of Alfa Romeo. Good to see though, because it's been a long time since they've shown some really good pace in that car. And then after that, Aston Martin looking pretty good. Not really surprised though, because we know their car's better suited for higher downforce tracks. Haas looking better than last Grand Prix, but not that much better. And AlphaTauri looking okay, I guess you could say, with their car. They've also brought a new upgrade, which we'll get into later. But yeah, they're looking, I would say, okay, are the AlphaTauri team. But coming away from this, what would I say the pecking order is for qualifying tomorrow, based on what I've seen? I reckon it'll be Ferrari, then Red Bull, slightly behind Red Bull will be Mercedes, and then it'll be, I reckon, I'm going to go Alpine just ahead of McLaren in 4th, McLaren 5th, and then Alfa Romeo in 6th, Aston Martin 7th, AlphaTauri 8th, Haas 9th, Williams 10th. That's what I think the pecking order will be in qualifying tomorrow. And that is actually a slight bit different from what I expected it to be coming into this weekend, because this weekend I thought McLaren would be quicker than Alpine, and I didn't think Alfa Romeo would be as quick as they have been today. So yeah, some surprises in the order so far this weekend. But before I come to you guys in the chat, I just want to show something on screen. There was a guy in my chat yesterday called Pete Dunn, and he said, I could give you some pictures if you like from when I was in Singapore a few months ago of the track and all of that. And I, said, if you want to, then make sure to hit me up on Discord. Instead, he hit me up on my email address, which, by the way, if you ever want to send me an email for business reasons or whatever, then my email address is in the description down below. And he sent me some pictures of when he was in Singapore back from April or May, I think it was. I just want to show some of them on screen, because it does show just how, the amount of work that goes into setting a Grand Prix up, because the surrounding areas look so much different when it's, when there's no Grand Prix there compared to, obviously, right now. So let me show them on screen now. This is him on the pit straight. You can see there's no pit wall there. And on the left-hand side, you can see there's no grandstand there or anything. And it's just a grass area. And it looks very dystopian, I guess you could say, without all of the stuff there that's normally there for the F1 race. So yeah, that's a bit of a weird looking scene, I guess you could say, at that part of the circuit. And then here is him stood where the pit exit is. Obviously, the pit wall would be in between those two curbs, you can see. One on the pit lane side, one on the track side. So, yeah, that's what's really missing on that side of the circuit. And then here is a picture I think he took of the final couple corners. You can see on the far right-hand side, that's the entry to the pit lane. So, yeah, this is like the final couple corners. And you can see just how much different the whole scenery looks in the day. And when, yeah, the stuff isn't up for the F1 race, just how much different it is. And this is also another picture, I think, of the final... Is it the final corner? I'm trying to remember what he said. I think this might be the... Well, the grid hatchings are here, so this might be the final corner. Another picture of that. And then, here's another picture he sent me of Singapore at night. And what a beautiful, futuristic city it is. And, yeah, some great pictures from Pete that he sent me. Thank you so much, if you are listening, Pete, for sending me these. And, yeah, it's definitely a nice place to visit, Singapore, if you're going to visit Asia. I mean, obviously, you do need quite a bit of money to make a trip there worthwhile, and at the moment, especially if you live in the UK, money is hard to come by, yeah, it's not a great situation at the moment financially in this country and in the world. I'd say in most places, honestly, given what's gone on in the last couple of years and at the moment. But if you can ever go to Singapore and you've got like a lot of money, and you've got time on your hands, then even though I've never been, just from looking at the scenery and hearing what Singapore is like from other people, yeah, it's definitely a trip you should make. Again, if you've got the money to make it worthwhile and the time as well. But I will now cut back onto some pictures of Red Bull. And let's get into your comments now. So let's see what you guys think of what I've had to say so far. And yeah, let me know, again, with the whole budget cap possible violation by Red Bull and Aston Martin, what do you think the punishment should be? What do you think of the whole situation as well? And let me know for the top 3 teams based on what what we've seen so far in practice. What do you think is going to happen for Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes in qualifying tomorrow? Let me know right now in the live chat. But if you have not subscribed to the channel before, make sure to do so if you are new to the channel, because we will be doing plenty of content tomorrow and on Sunday to cover the Singapore Grand Prix. In regards to tomorrow, I'll be going live at 10:45 AM UK time. Firstly, until 12 PM to cover Practice 3 and do a Practice 3 watch along for that. Then from 12 PM till 2 PM, I'll be doing a build up to qualifying. And then from 2 till 3 PM UK time, I'll be doing a qualifying watch along. And then for at least half an hour after the session finishes, I'll be doing a reaction with you guys to the session itself. And just so you know, if you are new to the channel, we do qualifying and race watch alongs for every Grand Prix in 2022 and every Grand Prix in general. So make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the channel. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And for everyone watching right now, don't forget to smash the like button on this video, again, if you have not already. And don't forget as well, if you haven't, to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. But now, let's get into some of your comments. And there's some quite long comments in the chat, so this is going to be good. Hello to everyone, by the way. Hello to McLaren F1 Race, A. Bridges, Ronan Brady, Lab Gorilla, everyone who's watching and in the chat. Great to see you all. Paul James Squibb says, hi, Cheza, how's the film course going? Can you involve F1 in it? Make an F1 documentary or something? I mean, there is an element of because obviously I'm doing film, media, and photography. When you're looking at photography, there is an important element there that you could use for Formula One because, you know, the pictures I use, for example, on stream are took by professional people that, you know, take these pictures and travel to all the Grand Prix. And yeah, I could use it as a part of my course. But I want to widen my range of, you know, qualities, I guess you could say. I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but I want to widen my scope, I guess you could say as well. Maybe that's what I was originally trying to say there. But how's the film course going? The first week was last week, Tuesday and Wednesday, and it was just really an induction period, just getting us introduced to what we're going to be doing on the course and, you know, some basic level stuff. Problem is, this week, I didn't go in to uni because they were on strike for both days. So yeah, I've not done any uni lessons this week. But next week, uni's back in on both days. But unfortunately, the week after that, they're on strike for one of the days that I'm supposed to be there. And then the week after that, I think the 18th and 19th of October, they're on strike for both days. So between now and the start of November, I've only got 3 days at uni, which is not great when we're still technically in the induction period. But I completely support their, you know, reasoning for going on strike, the staff, because a lot of people, working class people in this country, deserve a pay rise. I mean, I'm also, with my part-time job, working with another, you know, what do you call it? Working for a company that's also having strikes at the minute. So, you know, I completely understand that all happening, to be honest. But yeah, the first week went absolutely fine, and I'm looking forward to properly getting on with the work. Thanks for asking that. And also, Paul asks, is there a set penalty for breaching the budget cap, or does it depend by how much the cap was breached? I would have thought team budgets are something the FIA keep a close eye on. That's one thing I forgot to show on screen, is what the FIA have in their arsenal for punishment. Let me just find it, because on the main Ferrari news account, they posted it as to the punishments available. Or did they delete it? Let me just look. I hope they didn't delete it. Let me just see. Right, here we go. I'll just show this on screen quickly, and I'll actually just zoom in a bit. This tweet. So let me just show this on screen. So yeah, this is from a Ferrari news account, but they, you know, they do report on actual news. It's not just a news account posting absolute bullshit. And actually, it does link to an actual story here to do with the possible penalties. So the penalties for breaching the budget cap could be monetary fine, reprimand, deduction of constructors' title points, deduction of drivers' titles points, suspension/exclusion, limitations on ability to conduct aero testing, reduction of cost cap. Those are the restrictions or punishments, rather, that the FIA have at their disposal. Personally, I would go for at least deduction of constructors' points. I think that's at least what needs to happen. Wade asks, how much did Hamilton punting Max at Silverstone cost Red Bull? Well, I don't think it would have been enough to cause a major breach of the limitations. I mean, it would have cost them like a lot of money in our terms, but for them, it would have been pocket money, really. So yeah, I don't think Lewis Hamilton caused him to go over the budget cap. Nish says, think the budget cap was introduced last year to test if the idea was feasible. It was introduced. Don't think it was meant to be enforced. No mention of any penalty for breaching the budget cap for 2021 season. The budget cap was not introduced to be a test idea. It was introduced to bring parity to Formula One, or more parity. Obviously, you're not going to have every team on the same pace. That's impossible to have. But they want to bring the field a lot closer together and stop having, Mercedes spending 500 million and then Williams spending, 100 million, maybe even less than that. They don't want there to be that big of a gap in spending and development. And what will happen if the budget cap is properly enforced is, again, in 2 or 3 years' time, when we get to the end of these regulations where there's no alteration to the regulations, the grid will start to close up. So it is a good idea, and it should have been Formula One a long time ago, to be honest. Hello to Moas, by the way, in the chat. M90 Regal says, is the Red Bull Aston Martin budget cap breach still unconfirmed and pending official announcement? I'm a Red Bull fan, and if they did, they should be banned from the constructors. It's not official, it's a rumour, but given the people that reported on the rumour are Automotor and Sport, who are quite reliable, it's likely that that's happened, or it's at least likely that there is a team that has broken or gone past the cap limit. So I don't think these reports, rumours, whatever you want to call it, I don't think they're totally unfounded or just pie in the sky shit. Moa says, honestly, would feel so shit as a Red Bull supporter if it's true. Hoping it's not. M90 Regal says, I'm also a Verstappen fan and feel in some ways he should be docked points also. Not an outright ban for Max, maybe 100-point deduction for Max and ban for Red Bull, whether anyone wants to admit it. I wouldn't go that far. Honestly, I don't think it should affect drivers' points at all. It should be a punishment for the team, because Max Verstappen has nothing to do with this. I mean, yeah, Max would have gained from let's say if it was a $5 million overspend by Red Bull that gave them an extra half a second, like it said in that article that I went through earlier. Let's say that's the case. Yeah, Max would have benefited from it, but you can't sit there and predict exactly what his results would have been had he not had whatever advantage that he had with that overspend. So yeah, I think the best thing to do is to focus your punishment on the team rather than the driver, because it's got nothing to do with the driver at the end of the day. D'Angelo Williams, if Red Bull did overspend, their punishment should be car development related for 2023. To be honest, I'm not for docking points at all, but car development is definitely where the punishment should be. What they could do, which is something I was thinking of earlier, what they could do is not allow them really at all to develop next year's car. I mean, they could allow them to develop the car for maybe the first couple months in terms of the amount of money they would allow them to develop the car, but they could just, cut their budget of development in half, or, cut most of it off for them. That's definitely something they could do. Or what they could do, because we do have this, what's it called? The sliding scale of aero testing, where now in Formula One, and this came with the budget cap as well, if you finish lower in the championship for the following year, you get more development time than teams at the very front. What they could do is, is punish them heavily with that and not allow them to really do a lot of aero testing, because that would affect them next season. Even if they started the year with a car that was a bit quicker than the rest of the field, it would eventually catch up with them. M90 Regal says the car plays a huge part of the driver's performance. I'm a Lewis fan also and can admit this. If Max had an unfair advantage due to essentially illegal car, then he should be docked points. Again, I don't think so. Because again, if you let's say again, if they have improved the car by a few tenths of a second with an upgrade that they shouldn't have brought because it wasn't within the regulations with the budget cap. Let's say if you look at the final, how many races? The final 7 races of last year, which would have been from the Russian Grand Prix until the last race. If you look at those races, you'd need to look at, like, you know, how many of those races would have Verstappen, like, where would he have been without that upgrade, for example? That's why it's difficult to punish the driver in terms of docking certain amount of points, because you don't know where they would have been without that upgrade. What I'm trying to say is Max may have still finished in this certain position in this certain Grand Prix without the upgrade that the Red Bull car had. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's why I think it's trickier to punish the driver, when with the team it's a lot more feasible and I think reasonable, I would say. D'Angelo Williams says, I think docking points is far too extreme, to be honest. Even though I support Mercedes and mainly Lewis and George, the punishment should definitely be for car development. Let me look at some other comments here. M90 Regal says, maybe I'm being too harsh. I just hate F1 management half the time in the way they discipline. I was hoping for more from Mercedes today. I had a feeling they would be competitive at Singapore, but was hoping they'd be a bit more dominant today. I guess we'll see how FP3 and quali go. Yeah. I think your expectations may have been a bit too excessive, but Mercedes are definitely in the fight this weekend. There's no doubt about it. McLaren for race. Evening, Chazza. Evening to you. Says, using my realistic brain, I think if the rumours are true about overspending, the FIA will deduct points from Red Bull's constructors. Result, my lizard brain praise Lewis could be at 8 times GOAT. Obviously 8 times world champion. Yeah. They've got to do something. I think they've got to at least deduct constructors' points and a decent amount of constructors' points, you know, that actually makes a difference. Because if they don't, then like I said, and they only go for a fine or a reprimand, then the budget cap is dead. Absolutely dead. But also, it's going to put even more of an asterisk next to his championship in 2021, and even to a certain degree for this year as well. So, yeah, if they want to avoid continued allegations of them and Red Bull being in cahoots with each other, and Red Bull having the FIA, you know, basically run defense for them, I guess you could call it, then they need to properly act. Because things will get very messy. Very, very messy if they don't. Vico says, Verstappen is hard to beat no matter the track. He should grab a podium at least with no reliability issues. Yeah. For this weekend, Verstappen, at worst, he'll be on the podium. I don't think he'll be any worse than that. Let's look at some other comments here if I can. Prank says, I'm late, backed it up to listen to the whole. No problem. And there's the porn bot on good time. Paul Bartolo says, dock them aero time. Depends how much you dock them of, though. It needs to be like at least half, really, of the testing they would have been allowed if they had, you know, if they'd gone by the rules. So it needs to be, again, enough of a punishment to actually hurt them. You know, if you look at the constructors table for this year, even last year, if you dock them 10 points, it makes literally no difference. because Red Bull last year, even with a 10-point deduction, still finishing second, clearly ahead of Ferrari behind. And for this year, you dock them 10 points or 20 points, it doesn't make a difference. They're still going to be leading the constructors' table for this year, and they'll still win it. So it needs to be a proper punishment that hurts them. If, again, I have to stress this, if it is true that they have violated the budget cap restrictions, because we don't know it officially for yet, so please do remember that, guys. D-Chat says they're not sandbagging, the tyres are overheating by the end of the lap. Mercs can preserve their tyres better. Maybe that's true, but I think with Red Bull, I think, with the lack of pace they normally have on a Friday, I think with Red Bull, it's normally to do with them just not pushing as hard with their car. That's normally been the case this season, and I've been proven to be right most of the time. So yeah. D'Angelo Williams, Mercedes will definitely get a P2 or P3 tomorrow. Let me just move on to some different pictures. There you go, of the beautiful Ferrari car. D'Angelo Williams says Mercedes will definitely get a P2, P3 tomorrow, and P3 tomorrow in qualifying. Their car looks more balanced than Ferrari, to be honest. Even if they don't, they'll have a better tyre deg in the race and overtake them. If they can get at least a top 3 in qualifying tomorrow, then their chances of victory are very good, because like you said, their tyre deg is very good compared to the other 2 top teams. I haven't actually looked into the long run data from today, because obviously they do it in practice too. I'm going to have a quick sneaky look at the lap times just to see what they were like. I can quickly find it. And by the way, you can find it as well on the FIA website. If you go to the event and timing information of the Grand Prix and then go to lap times under this second practice, you'll be able to find it. So I'm just going to have a quick look to see what the lap times were. Well, Max Verstappen didn't do any long run laps. He only did 8 laps in total, so he didn't do any. Leclerc didn't really do any long run laps either, to be honest. He just did and obviously he had a bit of an issue getting out onto the track. I think he missed the first 20 minutes or so, did Charles. So yeah. Oh no, I think he missed the first half an hour actually of practice 2. So yeah, he didn't do any long run pace either. So I'm gonna have to look at Sainz and Perez. Perez only did 2 longer run laps, which isn't great. And then what did Sainz? Sainz did a proper long run, a few laps, and yeah, hard to tell really how good it is, because Perez only did 2 flying laps. Lewis Hamilton did a longer run, and his long run doesn't look to be that good, honestly, compared to Carlos Sainz's. George Russell's, though, his long run looks good. Maybe not as good as Sainz's, but about on the same pace. So yeah, looking good there for Mercedes. D-Chat, FIA didn't mention any names. For all we know, it'll be Williams who submitted their financials late. Well, they already got fined for that. I mean, maybe they'll get fined for it again, which would be a bit funny. But if there's what's the saying? Is it? There's a saying to do that is that kind of explains how there's always a bit of truth in every, like, rumor, I guess you could call it. I think the saying is, if there's smoke, there's fire. Is that the one? Let me just Google it. See if I'm... Let me just Google to see if that's what... Yeah, yeah, that is about what I'm saying. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure that saying that I was going on about was correct. Yeah, if there's smoke, there tends to be a bit of fire. So I do think there is a bit of something here. Nicolo asks, did you not see the clip of Toto talking about it? I did see it, and it was quite strong. And I am sure he will want something to be done about it quite steadily, and for the punishment to be, substantial, given what's happened between them and Red Bull in the last couple of years. Derek Tate says, I think in reference to breaking the budget cap, whichever team broke the rules, they should be punished. I'm a Mercedes fan, and if it were them, they should be punished as well. Absolutely. That's, yeah, the bag on the money there. And he says, great insight, Chazza. No problem. Thanks for that as well. Yeah, no matter what the team is, I think we are forgetting. How the fuck did Aston Martin, let's say they have gone over the cap by like a couple million. How have you broke the budget cap and you're still shit? That's something Ferrari would do. Like in how Ferrari with, in 2019 when they had their illegal power unit, and then obviously they got it took away from them for 2020 and after then, thankfully. In how they, Ferrari had this illegal power unit, yet they still didn't win the championship. The point in cheating is that you do it so you can win. That's the point. If you're going to cheat, make sure you do it to the point that you're winning, not finishing second or being absolute shit. So if that is true, that Aston Martin went over and broke the budget cap by 2 or 3 million or more, and they're still shit, then that is hilarious. And I think that just shows how Lawrence Stroll is not great in his role as the person running Aston Martin. Paul Bartolo, Ferrari and Mercedes improved during the year, but cap breaches based on the NRL are funny. Sometimes teams down the bottom breach it, so it could be Aston. Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, maybe, you never know, more teams, it could be revealed, have gone over the cap. We'll have to see. M90 Regal, Japan says, Japan looking like the race that Verstappen wins the championship. How soon can Red Bull win the Constructors? I don't know how soon Red Bull can win the Constructors. And to be honest, given this whole cost cap controversy, I want to hold off on that because Red Bull might get disqualified from the championship. So we'll see. Let's look at some of the comments here. Paul James Squibbs, which or what affects tyre degradation? How can teams make the cars that degrade tyres less? Is it more due to the drivers of the car? Certain drivers do wear their tyres out more than other drivers. For example, if you're more aggressive and you move the car around a lot more and you're more aggressive with braking and throttle application, you can wear your tyres out a lot more than other drivers. I remember with, Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button when they were both at McLaren. Jenson Button was a lot better at looking after his tyres when Lewis, not so much, even though Lewis has since then improved a lot in looking after his tyres and being able to be so quick on tyres that have done quite a lot of miles, a lot of laps. In terms of the teams being able to improve their tyre degradation, the only thing you can really do is maybe fiddle around with the suspension. But one thing you can do in terms of setup is just put more aero on to help that. For example, if you're at a track where half of it is a load of corners and half of it is long straights, like Spa, for example, if you're suffering with bad tyre wear, then the only way to combat that is to not run as little downforce or lower downforce package as you ideally would want to, and go for some higher downforce settings to combat that. Because, even if you're so quick in qualifying, if you don't have the tyres for a race, then it doesn't really matter. Let me just ban this porn bot before they spam all those messages. There you go. They're still going to post all of them, though. There you go. Instead, by the way, Rook, instead of timing them out, if you have a... Do you have a setting on your end that can... If it says Rook on your end when you click to, do something to them, if it says hide user from channel, just click that if you can. Because timing them out doesn't do anything. They're just going to come back and do it again. And yeah, Rook, finishing what I was trying to say, no smoke without fire. Exactly, that's what I was trying to say there. But I just severely tripped up over myself. M90 Regal. How many points was Aston deducted for their copycat Mercedes? I think it was it was 10 or 15 points, I think. I feel it should be as much or worse. Problem is, I think Aston that year got just a slap on the wrist. Wasn't it only 15 points? Let me just quickly look. Yeah, it was quite light of a punishment, considering how similar it was to the Mercedes car. Let me just find it on the Wikipedia quickly. Racing point were given, 15 Constructors' Championship point deduction and a €400,000 fine. And also M90 Regal says 2019 Ferrari should have been banned, indeed, but yeah, they weren't. And the only reason they weren't, in terms of the results for that year, is because they didn't win the championship. If they won the championship, they would have got disqualified because the pressure on them would have been so immense. The FIA, I mean, the pressure on them. D'Angelo Williams, Aston Martin is like the student that cheats just to get a B+ and to not get caught. I wouldn't even say a B+, to get a C, a solid C. Yeah, if you're gonna break the rules to the point where you actually get top honours or pretty much top honours. Don't break the rules and still not really do anything that spectacular. Times Out works faster, but not on my current laptop. I banned them just after. Okay, no problem. D-Chat says, not sure why it smells of the same Flexi Floor saga. We'll see what happens with it. Pornbot has all the latest news. Yeah, I looked in my settings yesterday to see, can I find some way of, stopping that bot from doing it, but I can't, unfortunately. I don't think you can ban people from commenting in your chat who have certain, numbers or whatever in their name, like that bot does, so I can't do anything about it. If I just view the delete, and as well, the deleted message is just a load of emojis, so yeah, I can't really do anything about that. M90 Regal, that's the problem. 15 points isn't enough for this. It should be 150. Yeah, it should be substantial, but we'll see what they do. Now, I'm going to go on with the rest of the stream now, and make sure to keep your comments coming, guys, in regards to what we talked about with the budget cap possible violation from Red Bull and Aston Martin and what you think the punishment should be. And let me know if you want to, again, if you haven't already, how you think the top 3 teams are going to get on this weekend in the fight for pole position. Now, for the rest of the stream, just to let you guys know, what I'm going to do is, go through the midfield teams and look at how I think they'll get on. Also, we'll look at a couple teams' upgrades. But one thing I unfortunately will not be able to do tonight is to do a track analysis, because I couldn't find any onboard laps from Singapore to show you guys that wouldn't get me a copyright strike or copyright claim. The only way I could show it on board from Singapore is by showing an F1 on board, and that would get me a copyright claim, so I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, we're going to go through the rest of the midfield team, show the upgrades of certain teams, and then, we'll come to you guys later on. Actually, one thing I forgot to do was to get into some qualifying stats to do with Mercedes, so let's get into that now. So, Lewis Hamilton, look out for him tomorrow. He's taken pole in Singapore 4 times since 2009. He took pole twice for McLaren, twice for Mercedes. Mercedes have taken pole position 3 times in Singapore since 2014. Those years being 2014, 2016, and 2018. And Mercedes have taken 1 pole position in the 16 races in 2022. So, yeah. Mercedes, not a great record, obviously, this season in qualifying, and qualifying has not been their strongest suit, but they have got a decent chance tomorrow. There is no doubt about that. But now, let's go on to those midfield teams, and we'll start off with McLaren. And McLaren, yeah, not a great day, not really a headline day. Normally on a Friday practice day, they will go for a bit of a glory run. We've seen a few times Lando Norris be very high up in practice sessions on a Friday. In Hungary, for example, I think he finished up in 2nd. I think Spa, he was in 4th or 5th, or I think Monza as well, he was in 4th or 5th. He's been very quick in practice sessions as of late. But today, McLaren just not really that quick, or maybe even not really going for some proper lap times, which is interesting. Maybe it is to do with this new upgrade and them just trying to understand how to get the best out of it and understand how they work for the car, and maybe try some different setups with it. I don't quite know. We'll have to see tomorrow. But with McLaren, I think for sure they will be better tomorrow. I don't think they're going to be, having both cars outside the top 10. It would be a massive surprise given how this car normally performs at tracks like this. This track is very similar, for example, to Monaco. And in Monaco, Norris qualified 5th for McLaren. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if McLaren were outside the top 10 with both cars tomorrow. And talking of their upgrades, what are those upgrades? Well, let's get into that now. So this is the first and the main upgrade, I guess you could say, with McLaren. So on the left-hand side, that is the old side pod inlet. The hole there you can see for the side pod, that's the inlet, in case you don't know. On the left-hand side, that's the old inlet. On the right-hand side, that is the new one. So the new inlet is the hole is not as big and is slimmer compared to what it was before, and it is a bit more following in the direction of Red Bull and the side pod design they have. I mean, they already were on that track to kind of copying what Red Bull have been doing from the French Grand Prix, where Red Bull went for a Red Bull-ish type side pod. So, yeah, that's one of the big upgrades we've seen so far this weekend from McLaren. But also there's a couple others to do with the floor and barge board areas that Albert Fabrega took photos of and pointed out the new parts. So let's get into that as well. And by the way, make sure to follow that guy, Albert Fabrega, on Twitter. Very good journalist in the F1 world. So yeah, this on the bottom, this is the old barge board / floor area from Monza. And then if I scroll up, you'll see the new one. And he, with the emojis here, the finger pointing emojis, he points out the new parts. So you can see with, on the far left hand side, him pointing to that area. If we look on this bottom one, the older part, you can see it is quite a bit different. And as well, with the middle hand emoji, you can see the point he's pointing to there. And if I scroll down to the older part, you can see just how much different it is compared to what they had previously, and as well the difference on the far right emoji there that he's pointing to compared to the bottom. There's a slight difference in, I think, the shape of this part of the car. So quite a big upgrade to that part of the car, which is good to see. Good to see McLaren upgrading their car, and hopefully brings them a bit closer to the top 3 teams. And also we have this upgrade towards the, I think, middle of the floor area. So again, the bottom is the car from Monza, and what that part of the car looked like. And if I go to the top, you can see the the hand emojis you can see here on the top for Singapore, pointing out the differences. And if I scroll back down, you can see with the one the hand emoji on the top right is pointing to the vents here on the, say, engine cover. You can see a difference when I scroll down to the bottom to the older one compared to the newer one. And also he's pointing with the far left upper hand emoji to something on the side pod there, and you can see slight differences there. And with the bottom emoji, hand emoji, is pointing to the floor area again, and yeah, you can see just a slight, I think, difference in the curvature of this area. But yeah, the main upgrades for McLaren, barge board, floor, and side pod inlet and engine cover, I guess you could say. And good to see that they are upgrading this car. I hope it's not, them breaking the budget cap. So, with what we've heard today about Red Bull, it wouldn't be great if they, McLaren were violating it at the moment, because it is a bit surprising to see such a big upgrade at this, at this point of the season, when other teams are only bringing like a slight upgrade, if anything at all, to be honest. But yeah, that's the upgrades from the McLaren team. Let's hope it goes well for them. And next up, we'll now go to Alpine. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures really doing a comparison between the old and new floor for them, but they do have a new floor on their car. And if it is responsible for their great pace so far this weekend, then things are looking very good for Alpine, and they look to be probably the fourth quickest team this weekend, which would be a vital resurgence for them after the Italian Grand Prix, where they got such a poor result. Fernando Alonso retiring from the race and Ocon not finishing in the points. They desperately need to score at least 5 or 6 points from this Grand Prix to make sure that McLaren don't start building momentum from their side in catching Alpine for fourth in the championship. And yeah, looking at the data so far and the results so far, looks to me like Alpine will be a tad quicker than McLaren, who I think will improve quite a bit tomorrow. So I think Fernando Alonso will be best of the rest in the Alpine. I've already laid out in my preview yesterday how great Fernando is at the Singapore Grand Prix and around this circuit. Esteban as well, look out for him. I think he'll be solidly in the top 10 as well. And Alpine should get both cars into the top 10. It would be quite a surprise if they weren't able to do that. And we'll see whether that new floor really does when F1 drops their pants and shows what they've got. Which is a funny way of putting it that Christian Horner did a few years ago, when that's basically what qualifying is, dropping your pants and showing what you've got. Once all the teams do that tomorrow, then we'll see whether that new floor has really given them a big advantage compared to what they had previously. Next up is Alfa Romeo, and yeah, a good weekend for them so far. Valtteri Bottas was in the top 10, finishing up in 7th place and less than a second off Carlos Sainz, who was quickest. So yeah, Alfa Romeo quick, much quicker this weekend than I expected. I thought they would be at least half a second slower at this part of the weekend and for the rest of the weekend, really, than they've been so far. They've been surprisingly good. And another reason why, to me, it's a surprise is because, one, in the last few races, we've not seen such good pace from them in practice as we've seen so far this weekend. But also, at street circuits this year, really since Monaco, they've been not that quick. Monaco, I mean, they finished in the points there, but they were not that quick, really, in qualifying. Baku, they were quite slow. And then Canada, even though they got a double points finish, their pace wasn't amazing or anything like that. It was good, but it wasn't anything amazing. So I'm surprised that Valtteri Bottas was so quick today. And as well, so quick around a track that he's not really had that great history around. He's only had, Valtteri, one podium here at Singapore in his F1 career. And obviously raced for Mercedes here in 2017, 18 and 19. And yet only one podium in those 3 races. And that is, not that great compared to what his record was at other circuits. So a big surprise. And I'm hoping that he and Alfa Romeo can keep it up, because it would be nice to see Alfa Romeo back up there. If you remember the first, 6 races of this season, Alfa Romeo were arguably the quickest midfield team. But since then, obviously, they've fallen off a cliff with their development of their car, which is really just down to the budget that they don't have compared to other teams on the grid, which is sad. But as long as they maintain 6th in the championship, that's all that matters for them. For Haas F1, a lot slower today than I expected, because I thought this car now, with this new upgrade, was going to be a bit better and stronger at these type of circuits, because at least at Zandvoort, the last aero-heavy track we went to, Haas were pretty quick around there, at least with Mick Schumacher. Today, though, no real pace at all. They just don't have the grip or the pace, by the looks of it, to really be competing with Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, and probably McLaren at later points of this weekend as well. So, Haas look pretty bad, and I don't think it's going to improve that much in qualifying, unless Mick Schumacher or Kevin Magnussen massively surprises me tomorrow with an incredibly quick lap, like they did, or like Mick Schumacher did at Zandvoort. We'll have to see what happens with that. Next up, AlphaTauri, and that picture was from today. Pierre Gasly came into his garage and had to get out of his car because his car was on fire. And also, his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, had in practice 2, had a fuel sensor problem, I believe. Let me just look to confirm. What that issue was. Yuki Tsunoda had a fuel system issue on his car. So you would assume that is a similar problem. I mean, that fire, I think, took place about where the fuel goes into the AlphaTauri car. So, not a good end to Friday practice for them. And to be honest, with the new upgrade they have on their car, which I think only Pierre Gasly may have run today, I can't quite remember. I'm not quite sure, actually, who's running what parts for them. I think Gasly may be the only one running that new front wing, which we'll get into in a moment in showing the comparison between the old one, which I think Tsunoda may have run, as you can see here on your screen. Not a great showing today with that new upgrade and with what happened there. So not looking good going into the rest of the weekend. Pierre Gasly doesn't have an amazing record here in Singapore. From the 2 F1 races he's done in the past. Nothing terrible, but nothing absolutely special. And obviously Yuki Tsunoda has never raced around here before. So I think tomorrow is going to be a bit of a tough day. I think the best they could probably do is probably get Gasly into like 11th or 12th place in Q2. That'd be a pretty decent result, I think, for AlphaTauri for the Grand Prix on Sunday. But before we move on to Aston Martin, let's get into this upgrade. So, new front wing for AlphaTauri. On the left-hand side is the new one, and on the right-hand side is the old one. The old one already looks a bit longer than the new one they've brought, and they don't have, they're not exactly the same. Oh, not exactly the same. They're not, similar looking. There is a slight difference in the way they look on the nose part of the front wing, which is where the upgrade has come. And if I just show this picture of the AlphaTauri from testing, you can see the front nose cone area there and what it looks like. And then if I come to this picture, you can see it's a bit, I think a slight bit different on that area that it was pointing to with the arrow there. And I think, do I have another picture? Oh no, if I scroll down, this was a comparison someone did, comparing it to the Ferrari front wing, which you can see here on the bottom. And apparently that is what this AlphaTauri front wing is trying to do. It's more of a copy of the Ferrari front wing. But apparently what they've done here, AlphaTauri, is they've abandoned the high wing setup that Aston Martin have gone for with their car. And I think the high wing setup is, you'll notice the Aston Martin and AlphaTauri cars previously I think Aston Martin still has it. Their wing is like higher looking, I think, compared to what they've gone for now. I might be totally wrong with that. I will admit I'm not the smartest person when it comes to this, this technical stuff in F1, but that's what I believe they've, made an upgrade on. And we'll see whether they do make any improvements on that in this weekend's Grand Prix. You'd think if it is a decent upgrade, you'd think it would show itself this weekend at such a important track, aerodynamically speaking. So we'll move on to the final two teams. Aston Martin next up. Not a great day today. I mean, the pace was good. They had both cars hovering in and around the top 10. So looking good on that front. But Lance Stroll did break down in practice 1. Can't remember exactly what the issue was. Let me just quickly look on Twitter to see what that issue was. May have just been a gearbox thing or something. Let me just have a quick look on their Twitter. And oh no, Lance clipped the wall at turn 5 with his left rear, and he stopped the car to prevent further damage. So just affected the car there. And I think they took on a new gearbox as a precaution, because when you do hit the wall like that at this track, I remember with Sergio Perez, he was it 20? I think it was the last time we were here in 2019. Hit the wall in practice 3 and then had to take on a new gearbox, and it cost him a really good grid position for the race. I think it might have been then. It might have been 2017. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, that is something you don't want to be doing in qualifying, put it that way. But they are looking quick. They're looking as though they can definitely get a car into the top 10 in Q3. And maybe it won't be Sebastian Vettel, because Lance Stroll looks pretty quick in the Aston Martin so far this weekend. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out between Stroll and Vettel. But in regards to Vettel, let's get into some stats with him in qualifying here at this track from the past, because he is definitely a man you've got to look out for on qualifying day in Singapore. Sebastian Vettel has taken pole in Singapore 4 times previously, and has taken those 4 pole positions ever since 2011. The years where he got those poles: 2011, 2013, 2015, 2017. And really, all of those pole positions were special in how he got them and just how he drove the lap. So, yeah, those were brilliant laps by Sebastian Vettel. And then his last Q3 appearance, remember this, was in Baku earlier this season. Been a long time since he was in Q3. He's had a lot of Q1 eliminations as well, has Sebastian Vettel. So look out for him in qualifying tomorrow. And finally, we will go on to Williams, and there's not much to say about them. They've got the worst car this weekend, no surprise there. I will admit, if I go back and look at these timings, it is hilarious that Alex Albon is 1.4 seconds quicker, and he literally stopped breathing 2 weeks ago. That just shows you how shit Latifi is. That's just hilarious. And great to see, by the way, Alex back in the car, and he hasn't lost anything. He's performing just as well as he was before his appendicitis problem. So yeah, looking good there for Alex Albon. But guys, I think I'm going to come to... hold on a minute, I won't come to the end of the stream quite yet. I'm just going to answer this final comment in the chat from Paul James Squibbs. Are the drivers' wages included in the team budget cap? No, they are not. Driver salaries are not included. And also he asks, could McLaren breach the budget cap by having to give Ricciardo 20 million, or is the budget cap for car development only? It's only for the car. And I think just the team in general. I don't think it's for. I don't think the driver salaries. The driver salaries are absolutely not included. I know that for sure. Just to answer your question there, but guys, that is it for this qualifying preview. Make sure to join me tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. UK time for my coverage of qualifying day at Singapore. And remember, I'll be live from 10:45, firstly until 12 p.m. UK time for the Practice 3 watch along. Then from 12 till 2 p.m. I'll be doing a build up to qualifying. 2 till 3 p.m. UK time I'll be doing a qualifying watch along, and then 3:34 p.m. I'll be doing a reaction to the qualifying session itself. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And don't forget to come along for that content tomorrow, obviously. For everyone watching right now, if you haven't already, don't forget to smash that like button. It does help the channel grow. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join our Discord server, link below in the description. Make sure to join our community here on or in the F1 community. And yeah, thank you guys for coming along for tonight's stream. Been great to have you all. And until tomorrow, qualifying day, a day that's going to be very exciting. It normally is very exciting in Singapore. Until that day, tomorrow, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.